This has been my most responded to video ever. I've gotten plenty of responses to my capitalist death doll video, and well, it's probably time to look back at some of them in perhaps a Bad Mouse classic format. You know how like I used to do videos just responding to people all the time? Except I would, but literally most of them are so terrible I can't even do anything but fiendishly quote mine all of them. 1,600%. Compared with the socialist regime.
Yeah, why should I care? No, seriously, why?
People are hungry, and I need money. But I have a way of getting food. I can sell this food to people in exchange for money.
Oh, someone else nearby is doing the same.
The most rational thing to do would be to take communists for a helicopter ride to that country.
Prolonged and stormy applause.
Yes, and while that is bad, that they are exploiting these people, the exploitation of these people is actually helping them.
The countries of the Third World, and I am referring to the entirety of Africa, the Middle East, as well as most of Southern Asia.
And I'm not interested in ANCAPs anymore, because the fact of the matter is, it's a very small issue that most people just don't care about, unless you live in Brazil or America. And also, it's never going to happen, because the tactics ANCAPs and libertarians want to use are contradictory to their aims and are literally terrible. Like things like secession, agorism, seasteading, etc. Yeah, that's really going to bring about a huge movement. No wonder plenty of libertarians are moving to the alt-right. But then I found another detractor of mine, called V, and he did another response to me. I never got around to responding to him when he made a lovely I don't understand hyperbole title for my response. So, let's have a look, I guess.
He did a video response to me, which again is something that a lot of communists don't do. They don't do video responses, and they don't acknowledge that they get criticism.
I just want to say, like, who exactly are these socialists who aren't responding? Like, I've always responded to my detractors, unless they're literally the worst of the worst, or, you know, not worth bothering about, but sometimes I just can't help myself. Libertarian Socialist Rants has responded to most of his responders, including me. Zazizi has, Finnish Bolshevik has, many other, you know, small channels have responded to their detractors in comments and whatever. You know, who are these people? Socialists are usually more than happy to talk about their ideas.
Stop voting, or stop allowing people who promise socialism to get into office, because they bring millions of death, they bring famine, they bring poverty. It's something that's constantly said, but look at Venezuela.
I hope this will be the last time I have to speak about Venezuela. Nah, that's fucking stupid and never gonna happen. It's not socialist. It had a socialist politician in government, yeah, but that's not automatically socialist. There's another place that has a socialist government, Kerala in India. It has a communist government for like over 40 years. And I guess that's why it's the best performing state in India. A country or a state is socialist if the basis of the economy is centered around worker control and production of goods not for profit. Does Venezuela fit this description? No! The majority of the economy is still market-based for profit. I also have to ask people who keep on spouting Venezuela, like, fucking hell, where have you been? Until Chavez came to power, there were situations quite similar to what is going on right now, but they were under right-wing reactionary parties, not socialists. When that happened, I guess your excuse would be corruption, or, oh, well, that just happens in the third world, you just have to deal with it. Venezuela was doing badly because the oil markets crashed, and because Chavez was trying to prevent capital flight. Those are not socialist problems. Those are socialist governments trying to deal and figure shit out when the rest of the cappy world is fucking them in the arse. Now, why is it that Bolivia is doing so well under Morales? Heck, why is Venezuela doing so well under Chavez? I mean, what about the entire of the pink tide? I mean, get real. Allende in Chile was a very similar example to Chavez, so what did these lovable capitalists do? Well, with the support of the USA, they paid off the lumpen workers to not work and thereby destabilize the economy. Yeah, that's totally a socialist problem. Oh, forget it. Let's move on.
But I disagree with the fact that capitalism is global. There are nations that are capitalist, which are completely for economic freedom. There are nations that restrict economic freedom.
Countries can still be capitalist and not be very economically free. That's a very reductionist way of seeing things. In my country, we had far less economic freedom in the 70s than we had in the 80s. Does that mean we weren't capitalists then? You can't just say more economic freedom equals capitalism, nor have you even shown how it's even possible for these countries to become economically free anyway. This is also, like, one of the reasons I hate people bringing up Hong Kong and, Macau and whatever as symbols of the greatest parts of capitalism. Despite Hong Kong having, like, over 1 million people in poverty, it's a rock. It's a tiny little rock. Apologies if you live there, by the way. It's a beautiful rock, with barely any natural resources like people love to go on about. It could not exist unless it had that monopoly as one of the big free market havens. If everybody else did it around the world, do you think you'd be seeing those hulking monstrosities? If you look across the sea from where you're living, V, you may spot Georgia, which has just as much economic freedom as the tiger Taiwan. And, by the way, more than Japan, Austria, the Czech, Norway, and the other tiger, South Korea. How are things going over there? The average household income is 4 to 5k a year. God, these economic freedom graphs are just like so shit. Colombia has 1 point less economic freedom than South Korea. How are they doing? Well, it's not in your favour. You'll just address some other problems like natural disasters or the war on drugs, won't you?
Why is it that most vaccines are made in countries that have complete economic freedom?
Because they're rich. And we'll get to this later, so stop before you're about to comment, aha, he just admitted that economically free countries are richer. Nah-eh-eh. Cuba, by the way, is like incredibly poor, and yet they still managed to make meningitis and hepatitis vaccines, so there you go.
The reason a lot of people have inventions in capitalist countries is because of competition.
So all those scientists, all those doctors, all those innovators, the only reason they ever bothered to make things is so that they could become filthy rich. Yeah, sure. I'm sure it'll incentivize greedy people. I'm sure it'll incentivize power-hungry people. But it certainly doesn't incentivize those who just want to go out and make something because they enjoy their field of work. This is just the mindset of an economist. If you don't give me the opportunity to make loads of money, I won't be incentivized to work. Yeah, I'm sure you won't if you're an economist. Now, obviously, before you quote me out of context, yes, having enough to sustain you plays a role, but only up to a point whereby the job role is cognitive and whereby you have to live a decent life. After that, it doesn't necessarily increase innovation. On the opposite, it actually can decrease innovation by just only innovating enough to satisfy and then bringing in something better in 2 years' time. That's the standard business practice model. I advise you to watch RSA, The Truth About What Makes Us Work, David Graeber's section on work, and the documentary Happy for further information. Now, this next bit is going to go on for a long time, and it's going to cover a variety of topics, but we'll start with a 5-letter word beginning with K.
When the state came to take away the farmers' crops, to take away the farmers' livestock, they did it by force. The state is coming for them. They immediately kill their livestock. I mean, why should the government have their horses? Why should the government have their pigs? The government didn't help them raise the pigs. The government didn't help them raise the horses, right?
Ah, the kulaks. The kulaks. The kulaks. Look, if I am correct in thinking that the kulaks were basically the owners of the farmland, and in other words being the equivalent of the barons of the English feudal system, but with some capitalistic differences, well, look, if that is true, then frankly, yeah, of course we're going to prod them and go, when they refuse to give the land back to the people. Yet, frankly, even anarchists would do the same in the same situations because they're capitalists. And largely, they did do this in many places in Catalonia because they're the landowners. Their removal is necessary for the growth of socialism. Now, I'll admit, I may have gone beyond the boundary with that one, but I think we can all agree, as socialists, at some point, they have to go. They have to fulfill the demands of the workers, or they have to get out of Dodge. No socialist would ever condone violent methods if they hadn't already tried and theorized every other peaceful possibility. And I'm sure you're just going to say, oh, filthy ideologue, caring more about ideology than people. Well, look, fact of the matter is, you've got a load of people here, right now, okay, the poor, who are being kept poor, in suffering. They're being made to work without any say in how they conduct themselves, because if they don't, then they'll starve. No democracy in their everyday lives. And then when we say, or when they say, or whatever, stop doing that, that's wrong, then they retaliate by confiscating tons and tons of food that they got because of their farmhands, not necessarily from them. Who are the bad guys? Sorry. Except we don't really need to worry about this anymore because for the most part, we don't live in a world where 8 people produce enough food for 10. Quite the opposite. Even if we were to accept that this is the fault of people telling the landowners no, it was one of the first attempts of socialism. And the point of ideas is that you do indeed adapt them and learn from them. From examples that you look at the primitive accumulation of capitalism, which caused millions of deaths, famines all across India, forcibly removed peasants from their holdings to work in the factory to build 5 chairs in order to buy one. Well, that was an attempt, and it paid off, for the capitalists at least. And Latin America also attempted to build up their capitalist infrastructure, and it failed miserably in comparison to the other nations, because Hispanic monarchies only cared about gold and silver. Now, you might well bear in mind that just because we are economically free now doesn't mean that we always were, nor is it necessarily the key to our success, as I've displayed with the amount of exploitation of the entire planet with the use of empires certainly did a great deal in generating the building blocks to their supremacy. If you're denying that, then you're in many ways denying history. Anyway, the IMF and the World Food Bank pour free market policies into these countries every day, no matter what some map you found on the interwebs might tell you. And they did worse with these policies than they did with more state-managed ones. You can actually find this in a little book called 23 Things They Didn't Tell You About Capitalism. Now, if you look at the ongoing socialist experiment in Rojava, most of the economy right now is still in private hands, but they're slowly building up a socialist sector. Different times, different adaptations, different places in the world. And since we're talking about ideology and how you think that ideology created all these famines in socialism, in like 2 countries, alright, capitalism, markets, and private property are really no better. Let me tell you about a famine that was also caused by ideology, the Irish potato famine. 1 million Irish dead in a country that had massively increased in population in the previous 70 years, that wouldn't increase in population at all for over 100 years. The overseas landlords pushed them into dependency upon potatoes by giving them land which was only effective at growing them. They kept all the good land to themselves. They extrapolated the amount of land people had there, and there was a big population boom. Effectively, the British were using imperialism in Ireland. And when these cropless peasants couldn't pay up, they got evicted. And they starved. Not their fault in the slightest, but hey, think about the poor old landlords. Meanwhile, at the same time, tens of thousands of ships were carting off with resources that could have helped the famine victims. But nah. Now that is literally a consequence of the right of private property, allowing people to own land that other people use, and therefore obtain the power over it so they can profit. But then of course you just say, nah man, capitalism's not the same now, capitalism's different, dude, we have healthcare and rights now, dude. Yeah, how do you think we got those things? And why can the same not also be said in a socialist society in the future?
It's funny that communism is supposed to be the revolution that brings up the poor and the working class, but when the working class doesn't want communism, then they're killed.
Yeah, I've seen Sargon use this argument as well. The working class, the poor, they don't want socialism. Yeah, like people, they don't want a lot of things. A huge amount of people don't want women to be able to have abortions. Many folks don't want evolution to be taught in schools. And plenty of fellas, don't even want basic social security and safety measures. The reason I, and many like me, do want these things is because we believe that it stands in their interests. And this is the point. Many people who are coppers are indeed working class, and this is why on a case-by-case basis I think that we should try and talk with some of the police if the situation calls for it. But that doesn't get in the way of the fact that the institution of the police, at least in its current state, directly serves those who own capitalist property. You can see this when they don't defend people getting evicted, but they do defend people evicting them. It's ideology at the end of the day. You have it too. We all live in an ideological world, and we're all ideologues. It's just that you don't call yours ideology, you just call it common sense and rational skeptical thinking. Which makes it pure, I suppose.
We still have regulations under capitalism. So, for instance, if I would produce, let's say, meat, there are ways I need to store the meat. There are ways that I need to make sure I don't treat the meat with certain chemicals. And despite it would be profitable to, let's say, use some additives in the meat, if they're considered to be cancerogenic, right, if they cause cancer, I will not be allowed to do that. Even though it would give me...
These are regulations, buddy. Just because you write something down on a piece of paper doesn't suddenly mean that everyone is going to obey it. And sometimes they do, but they just shit on everyone nonetheless. When the unions managed to get what we consider now to be basic labour laws, what did the companies do? Jump ship and move to South Korea and Brazil and other countries, and later China and Southeast Asia. They didn't remain and produce goods the same way just because they had better regulations and better pay. No! They moved out because you can secure a higher profit by doing so, allowing totally sadistic arse cracks like Yaron Brook to go to campuses and indoctrinate students into thinking that they're selfish for wanting them to have more because they make your iPhones and you won't accept a $2 a day wage for your cappy firms. So yes, I think it still stands. Capitalists will take profits over people any day. Your food example is like something I'd hear someone say at Mises.com about how e-com works. Like, yes, okay, in some circumstances, regulations are put there. So what? They are besides the point, not the point itself. The point is, what gave the shopkeep the incentive to cut his spending in the first place? But you still probably think, oh, well, it's still good over here. Yes, because you consider the third world to be completely separate from the rest of the world. My friend Omexi made this tweet the other day, and you might want to take it in. It's incredibly basic. It's just surprisingly amazing how people just ignore this. But this just leads us on to...
Again, like pictures from Africa. Why are they showing pictures from Africa? Why not showing pictures from the United States? Why are they not showing pictures from Canada, Australia?
Because it matters. Because we're connected to it. Big multinational corporations gain trillions in profits because of neo-imperialism that they can perform on the continent because nobody over here cares. Things like trade misplacing, paying off debts, and oh yes, the West imposes huge trade laws upon these nations so they can get access to things like cobalt, diamonds, copper, so on. Has this just gone over your head? Do you think that Africans are just lazy, or they can't farm well on the land, or that they have big, bad and corrupt governments? Well, yes, some of them are corrupt, like that guy from Zaire who was installed there so that we could get the minerals that we needed. And this continues today. To start off with, South Africa basically owns the Republic of the Congo. They have like 20 million acres of land there. That's the South African Farmers Union. Germans and Indians own a heck of a lot of land in Ethiopia. My country has about 100,000 acres in Tanzania. Sweden's got about 250,000 acres in Mozambique. And Zaire now, actually, well, most of its investors are now Chinese capitalists. Millions and millions of acres of land. That way, they can get all the cobalt they need to make phones. Yeah. I mean, it's fine you just saying, oh, they just need the capitalism we have here. Well, that's fucking great advice. That's fucking brilliant advice. I wonder why they don't take it. This fucking line of, oh, I disagree with all that stuff that's going on in Africa, but I still think that capitalism can be a good thing. This is a bloody mode. It's an acidic line that just so many of us buy into, you know, oh, well, I disagree with that, and then silence. Your silence doesn't mean anything, man. Nothing. We're all hypocrites, but you're a patriot. So why do I talk about Africa? Because it matters. That's the same logic as agreeing that taking in refugees, you on principle have to accept some of them into your house, when in reality governments should use the vast sums of money they have to house them.
Where does the government get their money? My taxes, right? There are people that are starving in my country, and the government doesn't pay them money, but we should pay money to refugees? What? Who are these people? Why should I care?
Oh, for Christ's sake, V, you just hear the word immigrant and immediately it sends you on a spin, doesn't it? Nowhere in there did I ever say import loads of refugees, so we can ignore that statement. This was a display of logic. Shall I simplify it even more for you? Okay? If one man has 100 houses, practically all gained through the exploitation of people's labour, and 99 people have one each, then suddenly there's a disaster somewhere and 15 people need houses. Are you a hypocrite for saying that we should give them houses even though you don't want them to share your house? I mean, for Christ's sake, one guy has 100 houses. What is the logic there, V? If we are in hypotheticals like this, who do you think should bear the responsibility for providing houses? The person with one house, or the person with 100 houses? Oh yeah, and he only uses one himself. Oh, but they're all the same because the capitalist did it through his own labour and stuff like that. No, he didn't. Whilst we're on this subject, I think we should just, point out the hypocrisy here. Denying those dirty foreigners to come to our beloved White Haven, yet also denying the reality that global capitalism makes people want to leave and come to developed land.
Why should I pay taxpayer money, right? Why can't you do the charitable thing?
Yeah, your taxes go on a lot of things, V. They also go on programs to help the homeless. The homeless are literally living off your labour, V. Ooh la la, but that's not the same. Christ. Oh my goodness, my taxes are being used to pay for other people's healthcare. This must be stopped. Oh no, my taxes are paying for abortions. I don't like women getting abortions. I watch The Handmaid's Tale and I think it's a wonderful tapestry for a functioning society. Oh no! My taxes are being used by other people. Oh my god, yeah, well join the fucking queue. But really, V, like, it's all okay, because I'm just going to say, well, I disagree with it and hope it gets better someday. And now, I'm just going to say, see ya, and I'm going to go off to conquer the Ottomans. So, you're not really oppressed by this, by the way, because you always can just vote. And you have the ability to vote for one technocrat or another technocrat. And that's democracy, guys. We have democracy. And if you don't like it, don't worry. You just say, I disagree with that, and then go back to playing with your favourite imposter, super soldier. Sorry, and thereby you can take all the benefits of appearing like you give a damn, whilst not really thinking about the systemic causes or caring much to tell people about it. Welcome to the Radical Centre, people.
Oh my god, okay, so first of all, rich people exist in communism as well. I mean, look at how much money Fidel Castro has, right?
Ah yes, that one about Fidel owning a small load of $900 million. I figured that you probably got from Forbes. Funny, they never actually provided a source for that. Like, literally there's no source, they just say it. It's estimating how much he might have by adding up the total government infrastructure and gains from the countries. If you can find a report showing his resources, then I'll change my mind. In fact, he actually dared George Bush to do it, so, you know, yeah.
Are you crazy? I mean, I think Zuckerberg constantly gives money to charity. They actually gives millions of dollars to charity. PewDiePie gives millions of dollars to charity. But I guess it's not enough for you. You want all. You want their hard labor. He worked for that shit.
Right, so the bozos deserve tens of billions of dollars, which in turn allows them to lobby the government and allow the country to become a corporatist economy that you folks love to jive on about, which allows them to perform imperialism in other countries that you folks just forget exists. Okay. Oh yeah, none of the guys could possibly have got there if the majority of the population were not deprived of the means of production in the first place.
Why the fuck do you, little twat, think you're worthy of his money? By the way, I have respect for BadMouseProductions. You little twat. I have respect for BadMouseProductions. What did you do to get his money? You didn't do anything. Jack shit. You just want to sit there and have money flow into your hands based on other people's work. How is that not theft?
Alright. Well, how about this, right? Okay. The landlord just sits there doing nothing. Maybe once or twice a year he comes along and fixes your fridge. And you're expected to load him or her with tons and tons and tons of money for doing basically nothing except for just owning the house. Yeah. You justify this because me property rights, me earned it, me risked it, apart from if he inherited it from his mum or dad. That happens. Just putting it out there. No, you justify all of this because it's the status quo, and I'm a rational fucking skeptic. By the way, this idea that socialists are just whiny teenagers, alright, well, you know, if you have a look at some of them, yeah, okay, maybe. But, alright, have you looked at the third world? Why is it that so many are in favour of socialism there? Do you think that they're just greedy, me money grubbers? Nepal's recent elections fielded massive communist wins. So do you think that they're all just idiots that are LARPing as revolutionaries? Or do you think it's maybe because capitalism hasn't done very well for the third world? Do you think that maybe these people might have a point in their frustration? Or are they just deluded, uneducated divs who come from brown countries? The Indian version of Antifa actually kill people. Kill rich, capitalist people. And most of the country supports them. Are you going to call them a bunch of pussies and idiots? Or do you think that it's maybe because the poorest in India don't have any hospitals nearby? Oh, well, that's just government corruption. Well, what causes the fucking corruption, V? Stop thinking about this in bloody 2D dynamics and blaming everything else on not capitalism or not my particular type of capitalism. V loves to go on about how he lived under 3 years of socialism and how he is therefore an authority of sorts. Well, V, seeing as you're a native Romanian, I'd like to ask you a question. Why is it that in a poll after his exhumation, 46% of Romanians say that they would vote again for Ceausescu? And why is it that 63% feel that their lives were better off before 1989? I was genuinely taken back when I heard that, seeing as I think of all the red bloc states, Romania was certainly the worst. But yes, are these people just idiotic brats who haven't lived through socialism, as you say yourself?
If you have an authoritarian government and it collapses, there's going to be a period of woes. But the reason the mortality rate increased in Russia is because Russia is not capitalist. Look at its color. Do you see it green?
Well, at least you didn't do as bad as Esoteric Entity did. Let's look at this then. Okay, by this logic, Russia, India, Brazil, Pakistan, Indonesia, Greece, and presumably then, to a lesser extent, half of Western Europe is not capitalist. And if they're not capitalist, then I just have to ask, what are they? Socialist, maybe? Well, I think I need a citation for that, thanks. I hope you know that there isn't just some number graph which suddenly determines at which point a country is and isn't capitalist. V, do these countries operate using markets? Do they organise these markets according to private ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange? Do they employ people based on wage labour? Do they produce things for the markets for profit? If they do, they're capitalists, and they are responsible for the effects caused thereof. You are just using this not true capitalist argument, but in a different way of saying it. Don't think that I can't see through it. Oh, but it's okay to say it's not true capitalism because it's the status quo. You obviously have reasons for why you don't. Hold on a second. What was that you just said a moment ago?
If you have an authoritarian government and it collapses, there's going to be a period of woes.
Well, V, I'm so glad that you've decided to take on this societies need time approach to system change. Because quite a big basis of those who defend the Soviet Union and the Red Bloc is that they were shit at first because the country needed time to build up their infrastructure and so on. Because, you know, they were coming out of the shadow of a backwater country. And you appear to have used the same argument in defense of capitalist Russia. Well, wouldn't you know? I haven't been particularly courteous in this sitting, and that's because I only bother with people who might get interested by these ideas. I doubt V would bother thinking about these points I put across because if there's one thing I've seen from plenty of people in former Red Blocs, they either go one way or one way. V has chosen one way. Thank you for watching, folks. Stay classless. Oh, gosh. Okay, sorry, one more, and then I'll finish. Okay, I just really need to get this one off my chest.
We are socialists. We are enemies of the capitalistic economy system for the exploitation of the economically weak. With its unfair salaries, with its unseemingly evaluation of human being according to wealth and property, instead of responsibility and performance. And we are all determined to destroy this system under all conditions. Hitler, just like you, also despised capitalism. This is why people like you were very easily converted into Nazism back before World War II.
This is not a quote from Hitler. This is a quote from Gregor Strasser. Alright? Gregor Strasser. If you want to use this argument as an argument for why socialism is the same as fascism, okay, get out of here. We're done. It's not from him. Go home and jerk off over Milton Friedman. Alright? Because I don't want to deal with you.